Hey everyone, this is Ben back with you in the Midwest Model Shop. In today's episode, we're going to cover two big important things. The first one is on the ship, we're going to start working on the superstructure, the initial white area going up. That's the C and B decks, I believe, yeah, C and B decks moving up. We're going to perform some major surgery on two of the main parts. I'm going to show you how to do that and why. This all has to do with Woody's Model Works photo etch detail set that we're going to be working on. And although this is a shorter episode, the stuff that I'm covering on here is pretty serious in terms of modifying your build to utilize these parts, and we're going to go in detail on how to do that. The second thing is, I want to know if you guys like this t-shirt. I'll get you a close-up of it, but it's a Harlan & Wolff shipbuilder shirt. It's their actual logo, or one we found in one of the Titanic books. Nora made it for me. I'm wondering if you like this shirt, and then would you be interested in any Midwest Model Shop t-shirts? I don't have a design totally locked in yet, but I've got some ideas. We've talked about doing t-shirts and making them available before for sale, but we never really got around to it. And I guess what I'm asking is, would you be interested in one or the other? If so, how many, what size? And if we get a lot of feedback, just put it in the comments down below. If I get a lot of positive feedback, enough numbers, what I'll do is take the steps to get the shirts made up, and we'll probably just build a little website so you can go ahead and build them or purchase them there. And if there's just like a handful of you who want them, but you're like, I really do want a t-shirt, we'll set something up, where you email me, and we'll do a thing through PayPal and get you some shirts sent out. But I think it'd be cool to make some Midwest Model Shop shirts. And all this stuff would go towards supporting the channel. I don't make a living doing this at all. I know a lot of people might think so. That is not the case. I make just enough money where I got to pay taxes on things. So I take these funds and I roll them into other models and the supplies and everything, and cameras and editing software and all the little stuff. It's just a small operation. So anyway, if you're interested, let me know. Appreciate the support. And without further ado, let's get into today's episode. Okay, so we're back in action. We got a lot of stuff going on here, but let's summarize it by going over here. This is my client's build, and as you can see, we've got this is all photo etch, and then if we move in closely here for our A deck, you'll see it's flush with the deck parts beneath it here. These are 3D printed parts that you could get from Shapeways. And that is what we're going to try to do with our kit pieces here for the Woody's Model Workshops parts. And now I need to explain all of this. Alright, so let's just start out here with this piece, and here we have a piece from, this is an extra that was actually the wrong part I got from Shapeways. They had to send me a corrected one. But what we're looking at here is this top edge. That top edge, if I was to lay these over each other, it basically goes like this. Hopefully that makes sense. So what we're going to do is, since we don't have more of these, we're going to use the kit part to simulate this. And we're mostly interested in, I know this is kind of difficult to see here, this lip right there, because that lip is where your A deck piece R1 sits. We have this edge, and it sits on here like so. And that's how you get this nice flush flat edge. The kit piece goes like that. And you have your wall. So we need to get rid of this whole upper area. Now, this thing measures, and your mileage may vary, approximately 1 mil in thickness. And so that means on, say, this piece right here, we would like to utilize this ledge. We've got to keep that. And then on this wall right here, we want to leave a 1 millimeter lip. And then we're going to cut all that off. And here's what so the idea is to replace all of this stuff, and let's look at that real quick. Okay, so here's the Woody's Model Works Superstructure detail pieces, and if you have your individual parts out, this is a little bit difficult to see, so I've got another set that I've glued together. So one of the options, you don't have to do what we're going to do in this video. You could go ahead and just sand off what little raised detail there is right here. Take these photo etch pieces and affix them directly to the surface. Now, that's slightly a waste because, as you can see, you've got these big honking huge kit parts right here, these supports, and on the photo etch detail, you have nice thin pieces. These are actually, let's zoom in here. So these bottom ones are nice and thin, but if you see right here, the ones above it, they are turned sideways. So once we have our deck and everything installed, you will pivot this 90 degrees. So you have a very nice razor thin edge, and this support goes inside and matches more accurately what's there with the Titanic. You'll also end up with a deck wall that is scale thickness versus using the kit parts, which are many feet in thickness to scale. In fact, the Titanic, if the Titanic was built to scale with this, it would make an outstanding battleship. It still would have sunk, but you know, you'd have good armor protection there. So if we take this piece, kind of like so, and let's see if I can find a matching section. Yeah. So this piece right here ends up going on top. It would be going right here. So we're just utilizing this deck space, and what happens is the two decks above, we're going to end up with an edge right here. We'll build the deck, and we'll end up with an edge right up here. So you have two contact points to glue this photo etch to. Right there. Now, hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, say so in the comments, and I'll try and figure out my life. But that's what we're going to do. So that means the next step is we need to take our kit parts. This is the one Nora went ahead and she pre-drilled these holes down here. And for the portholes, you want to do that. Before we monkey with anything else, we put photo etch on here, blah, 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 blah. We need to cut all this off. And this is from my previous video. Oh, not this piece, sorry. In my previous video, I'd made a little mark on the outside. I think what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and lay the deck on here to get our 1mm ledge, and I'm going to strike a pencil line all along here, and we'll come back with our Dremel, proud of that line, so there's extra space, and we're going to hack this all off, and then we'll come back and refine it. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, so grab your R1 deck, grab your next piece, and remember this is the ledge that we're concerned about, we want our line on. So just grab a spot where it's flat. This isn't too terribly difficult. Take your pencil, mark over the line, and because the whole thing moves, I'm just doing what I can here to ensure that it's all flush and matches up. Like that. And there you go. Here's your pencil line. And over here, you can see it even matches up perfectly with my little lip that I've got. And it runs the whole length. I got a little out of control right here, so I'll go ahead and remark that. We want a nice parallel line. So we're going to do that on all four pieces. Okay, so here's our piece marked. You're going to need a Dremel. I have this one set to about 1500 RPM. I've got an abrasive disc on here. If you got a better cutter or a cutter that you prefer, you know, whatever, get your tool of choice. I have a ton of these, so I'm just going to use them. I've got it set up at a slow speed because it's going to do a lot of melting of the plastic more than cutting, unfortunately, which is part of the reason why we're going to stay proud of that line. We're going to stay on this side of it. The very first thing you need, though, before you get going, is a pair of safety glasses. Make sure you put these on. I know a lot of you don't use them, you don't think you need to use them, and you don't. You can do whatever you want. This is America, except that when you get a big chingazo in your eye, you're going to wish you had them on. So, all right, so anyway, this is what we're going to do. And all we're doing is staying probably another 1.5 mils above our line, which, by the way, I double checked before I started, and it is about 1.5 mils above where I need it to be. So we're going to have extra on here, and that's totally fine. Later on, when we put all the pieces together, we can dial this height in to get exactly where we want it. Alright, and when you're done, snap your piece off, and this is what you're left with. So all these little boogery things, you can kind of peel them off real quick as best as you can to get your lip. You can grab your sprue cutters if you want to. But what we're left with, I think you can see it right there, there's my original line. And we're just going to get all this cleaned up. So we'll do all 4 of these and clean up all the little goobery stuff, because we do want this nice edge that you've got left over here when we're done. And like I said, we'll get it all smoothed out and everything. So let's press on and make that happen. All right, so here's one of our pieces, and you can see it's all raggedy and everything, but I cleaned up all the big boogers and stuff. And if we take it, you'll see here that it sits like so. And it's just a little bit proud. Now, you have several options at this point. We're basically going to go back to the kit instructions, which has you glue these pieces together and attach the other deck to it, which sits down here, and then you got to glue it to the hull. So we got to do that. So we'll end up with a piece like, have this like this. We can wait until we get to the point where we glue this deck on, and we just come back with a Dremel sanding tool, a knife, whatever you got, and you can file this down to match. Or if you want, if it's easier for you, you can spend the time now to clean these up and get it to the height that you want, so that when you do go to glue this on here, it is flush and it's something you don't have to monkey with down the road. That is a personal preference. You can do whatever you want to do at that point. But this is the spot we wanted to get to. If those of you who have the mini brass, or if you happen to have a skill of the Titanic side pieces, this is all photo etched anyway, and that's what you're working with. If you go to Woody's Model Works, he only sells the Superstructure part, exterior parts that go up. He also is including, part of the reason we're doing this is we have the beams that go above the ceilings here on that promenade deck here, right here on B deck and A deck. So we want to have all this photo etch stuff that works together. So anyway, that's what we've got for right now. The next thing we need to do is prep these pieces for installation on our hull, and that involves putting in all the little photo etch pieces here and all of the gazillions of little window LED things that we had fitting in here before our glass. So we're going to have to make all that happen next. So let's go ahead and take care of that. Okay, here we are back in action. So I've prepared my pieces. I opted to go ahead and smooth this off ahead of time before they were put on. I got within a couple thousandths of the height that it needed to be. It matches the deck. And I did that with a Lee Nielsen brass block plane that I bought my wife a few years ago. I didn't show how to do this because this is stupid expensive, and the only reason I have it is because I'm a woodworker, and so I use these all the time. If you're a woodworker, you know how to use this tool. They cut through this like butter, but you absolutely do not need to buy that block plane to achieve smoothing your edge out. You can still save it for later, but for the sake of having my act together, I went ahead and smoothed this off and got the right height that we needed. Okay, so now back to the kit instructions, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. As you can see, they want you to go ahead and put the deck stuff together and then attach these two sides and then put together, and you build the whole superstructure up and drop this whole thing onto the ship. We're sort of going to do that. So first thing, we got to fix a mistake that I made. Do you all remember in the previous episode how I said I put the scaled deck down back here and I cut out where this piece went, and then I forgot to do so for this aft bulkhead. What that did is it raised the bulkhead up by the thickness of the wood, and it's a few thousandths of an inch or something like that. And so if we look over here at this side, sorry, I'm banging things right here. We take our kit part and move some things over. So that key is supposed to lock right into here, and then this drops down. So it sets on there like that. And as you can see, there's this tiniest little gap down there that happens to be the same thickness as the scale wood deck. So don't make that mistake that I did. It compounds itself as it moves its way up. Ask everyone who warned me about this how they know. So I gotta fix that, and I just want to fix this one piece. So I think what I'm gonna do is I will remove this little edge right there so that this just drops down and hooks into position so that we get our spacing right front to back. We have this aft shelf, and that will cause it to go this way the right distance. Then what I could do is just remove this top edge. It probably will need to go down to the shelf actually, because this is about the thickness, this step is about the thickness of the deck, so that our next piece can fit into position like so. Now, while we're here monkeying around with all of this stuff, we want our lighting to come up from underneath, and we have this big huge deck right here, and what happens is the Cafe Parisian will go in the next deck up, but the windows that you see down here, this thing will end up, yay, they all need illumination down underneath. So yeah, we need to go ahead and cut out a big chunk of this, and same thing for up at the bow, except for the area where I have the D-deck entrance. So we need to remove material here to allow that light to come on up. So I'm going to go ahead and make some initial markings. Okay, so here we go. I just went ahead and cut all this stuff out because it's loud and kind of obnoxious, and I just made up kind of an X pattern to try and maintain some of the structural support of the ship. And the whole idea is that it lets light through, this is good, to the next deck up, and it does, and it works out just fine. So this deck piece that goes on top of here, so we have a couple of windows here, the lighting comes through just right, but then there's this wall right here. So I'm actually going to have to cut a couple pieces out of here to accommodate these two windows. They're illuminated, because that worked out really nicely. I'll show you that. And you can see right there the light's coming through, and cover it up, it'll be fine. And then we've got these windows. The light will make its way through them as well. It's this layer. It's these windows on this bottom part right here that we're worried about. Everything up on top here will get lighting from the next deck. So that's how we've gone ahead and done this so far. So what has to happen next here? I've prepped the holes for the windows, these portholes here. These need to get glued together, and they need to get primed white, and they need to get installed. And I'd like to install them on here. This is basically what I did on the other ship. I installed these parts first, and then I glued the deck down in, and it helped draw everything together. So I'm going to go ahead and glue these halves together, get some paint on them, and we can start moving towards getting this next chunk done. Also, they need to be painted white and glued together and got them ready to go, because I can't put in the windows down here until it's glued up white. So actually that's what has to happen. These need to be primed white. I might as well glue them together, and then I need to go ahead and install all the windows and the portholes that go down here. On the top, so this plastic's still really thick, but there is glass that's supposed to be on these windows. As you can see, it's really thick. I'm going to leave it. That's what you guys all have to work with, and I have the same thing. I'm just going to glue acetate to the back here. That'll be nice and simple, and then you'll be able to look inside anyway and see through to the detail on the inside. Or at least that's kind of the plan. So let's glue some stuff up, paint some things, press it on. Okay, so here we are back in action, and as you can see, I've gone ahead and painted up our two side pieces that we've prepped. I put, you can see in the glint there, some acetate behind the windows just to have some windows there. And then I put the photo etch details in here to get the shape of the windows, and as you can see, I've kind of got an ugly mess, and that's because I went pretty fast. Some things happened and they need refining, but I want to press on with the build because that's just really more important than monkeying around with windows right now. So let's see, if we zoom in a little bit here, you can see we have our yellow line. Everybody's favorite part of this model is painting that yellow line. And let's see if I can zoom in a little bit more. Notice the top of my lip is painted. I glopped a bunch of yellow paint on the top where the glue needs to go, which I know sounds a little bit crazy. There's a reason for that. We're going to take our piece that we painted white, and it's going to get glued into position, and as you can see, the seam disappears. The reason the seam disappears is, one, the fit's actually pretty good in the first place, and two, that top edge will create a black line that you'll notice, or a gray line. You'll have a line there, a seam that sticks out, obviously, because it is not yellow, because it's yellow up against white. So by putting yellow paint on the top there, you actually fix that issue that you have, especially with the shape of this piece. Sorry, I bumped on the camera there. So that's why we do that. Now, after I drop things, if we go back here in this corner, we take our other piece, you can see I cut out a little slot right there so that it fits exactly flush to the hull and in the position that it's supposed to be. And I'll have to scrape some of the plastic off of right here so that our deck, the B deck roof, will sit flat where it needs to be. And then it'll sit on these parts right here, this section, they'll sit flush and everything will be alright. So the next thing we're going to do is glue these pieces on, and I'm going to do it with CA glue and just work my way across probably to the bow, because the anchor point back here is the most critical thing. This spot, being in the right spot, is the most important thing. So we'll get some CA glue going, I'll work my way forward, and one of the things I'm going to be focusing on, we'll do this piece here to show you, is when we drop it in a position, it has supports on the back side. You want to keep it pushed outboard so we can get as flush of a fit forming around the hull as we can, and then we'll draw the whole thing in if we need to when we place the next deck piece into position. Hopefully that all makes sense. Okay, I realize this is a pretty wide angle, but we got to start somewhere. We're going to start with CA glue, and we're going to tack this thing into position. That'll help address the fact that I piled a bunch of paint up onto the place where the glue needs to go. And then we'll come back with our Tamiya extra thin fast setting stuff, and we'll get some more secured glue in, and we'll get a lot of glue on to make sure we have a solid bond between the two parts. So yes, that's all I have to say about that. So we'll just start with our CA glue. And I think we're just going to start out with a section at a time. Because it's big enough that it'll slide around. So it's like a combination of pushing the back in that way and then pushing this section out towards me so it sits where it needs to. Alright, now Alright, and then we'll just, so what you can't see in the camera here, or maybe you can, is, see how this moves? I've got room to put more glue up here and then move my way along towards the bow as we go. So that's what we're going to do. And I've got a toothpick here that's allowing me to spread this out a little bit more evenly. That looks good. And then we'll slide this back here. We'll finish our progression. And this is what I'm seeing here. You are bending this piece, this whole big long piece. I don't know if you can tell from here. Maybe you can see if you look sight down it this way. It's got a curve to it like this because the ship does. And then see how it's not straight, it's got a little bit of a bend. The hull bends. So you're going to be working all of those angles. And the trouble with this is, like I said, I painted yellow paint. I put yellow paint where the two plastic surfaces need to be meeting up. You want them meeting up without any paint on them. That way the glue can work the best that it can. But this is CA glue. The CA glue is just going to kind of create a seam where it grabs and sets up and just kind of hangs on to everything. It's hanging onto the paint. It's not, the plastic's not melted to the plastic. So that's why I want to come back with the Tamiya after this is in position and just, you know, very slowly and meticulously add that thin CA glue or thin Tamiya plastic cement into the seam and introduce it to allow it to go, and it will melt the paint, and then it'll melt the two pieces of styrene together, and you'll end up with a permanent bond, which is what you're looking for. Okay, and this looks not too bad. And the other thing we can do, you can grab a clamp or two, and that will force our two pieces together so that they line up right if you've got an issue with that anywhere, just to help hold things into place. I'm liking that. This looks really good. We got a little touching up to do here and there. I mean, it's not perfect, but for you at home, especially if this is like your first model and you picked a doozy for your first model, but if it is, you can do this just like I did. It's really not that hard. So that's one side. We'll bring the camera over here. Okay, hopefully you can see that. It looks pretty good here, just the initial glue up, and I know it's kind of hard to tell with the white background there, but it went on pretty nicely. So we need to go ahead and duplicate this process for the other side, and then we'll come back in here and we'll just make really small deposits of or to me extra thin cement. This is the quick setting stuff. You don't have to use that. You can use the regular stuff or your glue of choice. Just make sure you can get into that seam, and I would try to do it from the back side because it will cause this paint to run, and you spend a lot of time trying to keep it all straight. And you can just go back and touch it up, but ideally it'll just work right the first time. So let's get this other side set up. Okay, so here we are back again. Sorry, with the sides on. Here's our piece Q1 or the B deck. So on the back here, I snipped off these little tabs to let the light through for the rear windows that are right here. We talked about before. I'll get you a better view. And then also we've got these locator tabs here and here. These two back ones were giving me trouble, and I don't really need them, so I snipped them off and put them on flush so that this thing will drop into position like so, where we want. Now, let me get up here with the camera a little bit. You can see there's a gap right here. That's gonna all come in. You know, it already wiggles. The whole thing wiggles still when we glue all that together. But the idea is we wanted it to drop into place and get into position so we could check out all of our lighting and everything and have it fit in the front. This is just our initial step. Now I'm not gluing this in yet. We'll do that later because a whole bunch of work has to take place and happen first. Let me move a couple things here. Okay, with our overhead lights shut off, you can make out right there and there our back windows. They illuminated nicely. They're just the way that we wanted to. Obviously, we've got to get our hatches on the cargo holds and everything, but it looks good, generally speaking. We're off to a good start right here. Okay, so hopefully you can make out here that the lights are coming through the portholes nicely down here on the C deck. And then we have a little dark spot right here. Now, I'm zoomed in all the way here. The reason we have these windows darker than those is because, I chunked something there, sorry. When we put the D-deck doors in, remember we built that whole interior that you can kind of see? That's blocking the light from going up above. So we may put some tape or something here to try and get that illumination level back up. We're going to have to look into that. But the whole rest of the ship, everything's lit up and illuminated nicely. Seems not too bad. You know, it looks good. So more importantly, it's starting to look like that hull back over there. As you can see, it's all, I got spare parts and stuff on it, but we're starting to catch up. We're getting to the same point. But this is a critical step here because in addition to putting the B deck in next, this gave us the platform that we needed for all the photo etch detail from Woody's model work. So it's going to attach on the side and go up here and decorate all of the areas that we're going to see along here. We also have to work on our private promenades and the Parisian Cafe and all that stuff. I did want to draw attention to one other area back here. So I'm going to pivot the camera a couple times here. This is the second class entrance to their smoking room and things like that. This area in the back of the ship is supposed to be open. In these windows, it's open, and there's a white wall behind it. And then right here, there's a bulkhead and a door that you would enter on the inside. The problem is You can see down in there, and it's just kind of a mess. But I need that light to shine up through. So, because, as far as I can tell, on the real thing, this wall behind here does not have any illumination on it. And maybe that's the right thing to do. I'll put the wall up there, and these windows will just be dark. The light that comes through will be the light that comes through, unless I run some light bulbs or something in there to provide a little illumination. So that's just, you know, for example. And then we have down into these next windows here, you know, more. See why it's so bright? We have these hot spots. We're getting good illumination through there. So that's an example of something we're going to have to tidy up and figure out. But anyway, let me get a wide angle here. That's pretty much it for right now. I realize this episode is a lot shorter than you're used to, but this is a major step in the assembly process and getting these pieces cut to the right height and right angle so that we can drop the B-deck in and get a good foundation going for the rest of the superstructure as we move our way up is incredibly important. So I wanted to have a nice episode that just covered specifically that and how we got to this point. I'm still going to go back. I've added some I've added some Tamiya paint or glue in here to the seam along the front and the back side to help set this up. I'm going to let this sit overnight, and I'll come back and I'm going to add more glue to it. I just really want a good solid foundation that's a little flexible so that we're not cracking CA glue or anything like that, because this whole thing's going to have to flex a little bit to come together and join this hull or this deck. And once this deck's in place, that's when we really create our beam. On my client's build over here that's much further along, sorry the lights are out, it's a square box at this point. It's solid. It doesn't wiggle around. You can pick up the hull and it doesn't flex on you or anything. It's good. So when the whole thing's locked together, it's really robust and you have a good stable platform for moving forward. So that's my story. And you can see some of these details here in the rear well deck area still look really nice from the last episode. And the lighting through those windows, I think that looks just right. So yeah, that's it. All right, my battery's dying. That's it. This has been with the Midwest Model Shop. Hope everyone is safe, and we will see you next time.